Welcome to the If You Build It, Will They Learn podcast, a show dedicated to modern learning and development. With your hosts, Daniel Mendonca and Scott Babcock.
It's podcast day. Welcome to the show. This is If You Build It, Will They Learn? I'm Scott Babcock. I'm here with your co-host, Daniel Mendonca. Daniel, how are you today?
It's the morning. I'm moving a bit slowly today. Usually I say I'm doing well. So today's gonna bring out some honesty. I'm moving a bit slowly, but I'm hoping this our exciting topic today perks me up, gets me going. So I'm excited to be on the pod with you, Scott.
I do think when we were podcasting, we should try to bring some energy. Hopefully we aren't coming off too sluggish today. But we do have an exciting topic, and I'm pretty excited to talk about it. I love all things technology. And as you know from our last episode, we did a top 5 on ways to motivate your employees through the culture of your learning. Today, we want to talk about the top 5 ways you can use technology to motivate those same employees to proceed in their learning journey, to find more content, and to get themselves developed. So without further ado, let's dive right in. All right, let's start off strong here. So one of the things that technology can do, and our number one tip of the day, is going to be it facilitates exploration. So if you think about great websites, great technology that you've used, your favorite apps, whatever that might be on your phone or desktop, it encourages you to kind of seek out more of whatever it is. So one of the great examples of this that I kind of always gravitate to is if you think about something like a YouTube. Been around for a long time. Most people have interactions with it. You rarely go and just watch one video. They find ways to introduce you to videos you might also like, or people who watched this video also watched this video, and they make them front and center. They encourage you to kind of dive deeper and deeper into the site and get into what I used to call the YouTube hole, which is where you just start watching video after video after video, and then the next thing you know, it's 4 hours later, and the kids are hungry and need dinner, and you have no idea where your afternoon went. Not saying it has or hasn't happened to me. Maybe a friend of mine went through that once. But great sites often elicit that kind of interaction or behavior from a user, is just helping you kind of explore further and further. And that ultimately is going to drive you to do more and more in terms of development.
I think from the exploration perspective, the other great example is any sort of game nowadays, just little Easter eggs. And I know we're going to talk about gamification later in the episode, but just putting different things at the end of the internet or the end of the website that makes you go searching. And I know that one thing that we've been able to look at from a practical perspective is our virtual events and our virtual experiences that we put out in the world, and creating a little bit of mystery. I know we've done a lot of different themes and space and underwater and all this other stuff for our events, but they allow people to explore. So it's not just, your normal lobby and you walk through and you go into a conference hall and you visit booths, or you go into a breakout room, just creating different ways to explore the platform that are new and unique to individuals. Just like you said, like the suggested content YouTube rabbit hole that we've all been down. Scott, you don't have to be ashamed of yourself and say it was your friend. We've all been down the rabbit hole before. So I think any of those kind of examples that we brought up are great ways to allow people to explore, and exploration creates curiosity, and curiosity typically creates a great platform to learn new things, which is what the goal is. So the more exploration there is, the more curiosity, and hopefully the more discovery and the more learning.
When I'll just quickly add on too, with things like the Easter eggs and the little hidden tidbits within a platform and some of the success we've seen, the other thing that comes out of it that's a really big positive when we talk about motivation is the energy that goes around needing to find all of the moments. And again, they can be defined in a lot of different ways, but I'm always amazed every time we have these users that go in and like we see actual passion and energy around finding the sorcerers in the universe that we've created, or the little virtual environment, and finding shields or things we've hidden. And people, like, they share notes. We talk about like community and social interaction and like driving each other forward through competition. Once someone's like, I found all 15, their peers like, well, but I couldn't find number 13. Help me figure it out. And so like you see teamwork, you see energy and passion around it. And it always just kind of baffles me because ultimately they don't get to take anything home half the time. There's nothing tangible to it. It's just the sense of accomplishment that they get from it. And that energy ultimately spurs more searching and more guessing ultimately in the platform. And that's what this is all about.
There was a great episode of the podcast that we had Scott's two boys on, and it was all about imagination and the mind of a child. And I'm going through it now with my daughter. But you see curiosity and exploration in their eyes and in their personality and everything they do. And I'm dealing with a 16-month-old, and she picks up everything, and she analyzes it so closely, and then she decides whether or not it goes in this place or that place or this place. And I think that, somewhere along the way in our demeanor, we get comfortable. And we've talked about Scott's favorite, no growth in the comfort zone quote. We get comfortable and we stop exploring and stop being curious. And with technology, we have the ability to bring that back and kind of light that fire and allow you to pick up that thing and explore it a little bit and investigate and see how it fits a little bit more. And I think different examples of that are, like we talked about, using creativity, using graphics to allow people to explore and catch people's eyes, putting Easter eggs around your platform and other things like that. And I think it's all about bringing back a little bit of curiosity to spark development. All right, the second item here on our list around technology is challenging learners through gamification. Now, we started to dip our toe in the gamification pond, per se, in the last comment talking about exploration. But gamification, as we've talked about before, is all about creating an experience that breeds competition, allows people to have a little bit more fun in the environment, compete with their peers or others on the platform or with themselves. And what that does is kind of gets our, the motivational and the momentum juices flowing. Obviously, motivation being the theme of the month. Challenging learners to compete is going to spark that motivation. And different ways you can do that can be both through your learning, but also in this case, through technology. So the simple fact of being able to progress through the system via rank, allowing badges or tags or coins or tokens or pins to be earned in the system of, different curriculums you complete or different tasks in the system. All of those are going to motivate learners to explore, going back to point one, motivate learners to navigate the platform and search for opportunities to engage with the information you want them to engage with, which is really what you're looking for.
One thing we've never really maybe touched on fully in gamification, but it's a great way to talk about motivation, is there's both short-term and long-term gamification, I think. And something you mentioned there specifically around ranks is one of the long-term strategies of a site or a platform, and using your technology to kind of keep repetitive or long-term growth. Letting people build rank doesn't always have to be quick and instantaneous. It might require logging in multiple days in a row or completing content on a regular basis or whatever that component that you've decided to assign to that is. That can drive long-term motivation. And then you can also short-term things that are happening today, or things that happen in the next hour. You probably see this in your email campaigns that you get from every e-commerce site you shop on. It's today only 75% off of our clearance items or whatever. And the idea is to spark you or motivate you to get in and be active in that moment. So maybe you've got new content and there's bonus points today only if you complete the new content early. There's ways to kind of drive both short-term and long-term. And a lot of it is going to be based on what behavior or what objective are you trying to drive from that incentive or gamification. And I think you can look at that as a really positive way to motivate your people, again, either for a longer endurance engagement or even just to kind of re-spark some activity in that platform. And both of those are great ways to utilize gamification in a learning environment. Number 3 on our list today is going to be all about individualized experiences within the platform and really kind of setting the stage for that what's in it for me. We've talked about that a little bit in the culture section around knowing your audience and what's the driving factor for them. Technology is really how you bring that to life for a user, making it clear that you understand their interests and you're going to kind of serve them content that will meet their needs based on their current role, and then also understanding their career goals and letting them have visibility into what could be next for them. When we talk about maintaining motivation in a learning environment, a lot of it is understanding the path you need to go to get what you need, and understanding your learners and setting them up on a personalized experience. Technology will enable them to be able to experience the learning that's right for them, or the learning that will help them understand what could be next. I think technology is really the gateway that gives them that visibility.
Yeah, I think we talk about this a lot, but there's a ways to explore an individual's objectives, and how they relate to their own personal interests and career goals through technology, um, creating opportunities for curriculum to be tailored to who you are and allow you to grow and explore into paths that you may not necessarily understand. um, if I'm in role A and role A links directly to B, C, and D, like showing me different activities and different parts of, that paths that I can go down for B, C, and D allows me to explore. And technology really can help facilitate that, because you can suggest things to people. You can be adaptive. You can put those different things in front of people's eyes and allow them to go down those concepts and motivate them to learn more, which is obviously going to create a better employee, but also one that wants to be their master their role or move forward. And I think that those kind of interests that you learn to understand is going to create a very positive environment, just of learning as a whole.
Well, technology has a unique way of interacting with your learners on kind of two fronts. What you mentioned is a lot of, if A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D, there are natural progressions that kind of take you in those, and maybe they branch a couple places. Those are really helpful as a user to understand what's next sort of iteratively, so I'm not just jumping all over the board, and that happens. But sometimes as a learner, you also want to know what you don't know, and maybe you are in role A, but you don't see that as being the linear progression you want to go, and you want to see what else is available in the company, what other roles are out there, and what skill sets are needed to do those jobs. Technology is going to let you have that window to kind of peek at what other sides of the business. Maybe you're in sales today, and you're losing some passion and energy, and maybe you'd like to see what's in logistics, or uh, IT technology, or whatever maybe exploration you want to do to bring that back up. But technology is where you can house all of that and give them the access to find that information. And maybe they decide, nope, sales is still where I want to be. And they also have that linear progression path that kind of shows them what's next. But it lets you explore, and it lets you try to understand other parts of your business in a way that without some of those technological capabilities, you might be stuck a bit not realizing the world that's around you.
Number 4, this one I think is a personal favorite of some people who've been on the podcast, obviously, but myself included. Visually compelling user interface and user experience to help motivate learners. I think we've all been to a website at some point, whether it's on a desktop or a mobile device, and the second we get there, we scroll around or move our cursor around or thumb around, and then we leave because we can't find what we need right away, or we can't order what we need, or we can't buy what we need to buy. And that's a great example of a way to motivate someone with a visually compelling interface and user experience. I actually saw a quote this morning, for whatever reason, on some of the creative marketing Twitter accounts that I follow. And it said that the average user creates an opinion about your website in half a second. The actual opinion of the platform happens instantaneously when you land. And that is no different than technology that you put out for learning. If your learning management system, your LXP, your virtual event, your e-learning is not easy to navigate, a poor user experience, you're going to remove the motivation from the learner to spend time in there, come back more frequently, and they're really just going to come there and comply to what they need to comply with, and then they're going to leave. And when it comes to creating a community and motivating people to create, social learning environments and a community around your learning culture, that visually compelling UI and UX is quite important to that.
Yeah, and I think when I think about like how you can go wrong in UI UX, right? So if we're talking about what makes a visually compelling site, I think you can have too minimalist, you can have too much and chaos, and like two examples of that is if you are someone who's ever gone to do research and look something up, and you stumble across a white paper, uh, you've probably immediately gone, well, this is going to be dry and boring, and they typically are very detailed and they're very scientific, and but they're white backgrounds, there's black text, maybe you get a chart or a graph, but they're very dense, and immediately you have that visceral response that Daniel describes of like, oh, this is going to be a long slog to get through this to get the information I need, versus something that's very visual, has graphics, has color, is more dynamic. You're probably more likely to accept that. The opposite version of that, when the pendulum sort of swings to where it can be too much, and sometimes we think we're doing the right thing. I don't know why, but I was immediately like conjured an image of, and I don't know if you guys are too young to remember MySpace, but I lost friends over what they did to some of their MySpace pages because you could change text and do crazy colored backgrounds and then do way too many pictures and change font sizes, and sometimes too much is just too much, and sometimes red text highlighted yellow on a green background actually makes your eyes physically hurt. And again, I still am going to have that visceral reaction like, I'm not going to dive into this anymore, and I still get websites where I'll go shopping for stuff, and it's usually smaller companies that are trying to make things pop, but now they're making things flash and move, and it just becomes too much, and I immediately disengage. I think the same is true of your platform. Find who you are as a company, find your voice. We've talked about that and having personality in your training, and let that speak through your site, but don't feel like adding bells and whistles is always going to be advantageous either.
That's one of the things that I find interesting, and I almost let the segment just drop there, Scott, and then I was like, you know what, I have a thought.
I dig it.
I think overcomplicating that, we saw just websites as a whole and the internet as a whole get super complicated about 7 to 10 years ago, probably like 2012, 2013. You land on a homepage, there'd be music playing, there'd be crap moving over here and this moving over there, and all this stuff. And now I think it's a lot has to do with mobile design, but we've gone back to the KISS model, keep it simple, stupid. And everything's very flat design, very clean, sharp edges in a lot of ways, or rounded edge, but very sharp and of where something starts and stops. And so it takes your eye more clearly around, and just like learning today, where we talk about bite-sized chunks, clear, concise starts and finishes. I think with UI UX, it becomes the same, where you need to know where something starts and stops, and you need to know where the navigation around a page. You can't be jumping all over the place, or people will lose interest, which obviously demotivates. So it's been a unique transition where we went from really simple to really complicated. Now we're going back to simple, but I think with our platforms, it is the exact same.
Yeah, and I think realistically, we talk about it, and Daniel's ears will perk up, but it's what is the objective of the platform or the technology you're trying to use? And a huge chunk of what you're going to get out of your learners' interactions is based on the way you design it up front. So always keep that in mind, because that UI and UX can navigate, it can dictate how people navigate, what they click in what orders, what you want to be important or emphasized, but again, doing it in a way that isn't distracting. And if you think about that up front and design for it, you're probably going to get your best results. All right, let's wrap it up with number 5 on our list today. And this is all about giving a voice to your learners. In terms of motivation, we always feel more motivated when we're a part of the plan, when we're a part of the strategy, when we are a part of the process. And realistically, technology allows you to engage your learners for feedback. And that is a huge advantage to any company, regardless of what it is you're doing. But specifically in the learning space, letting learners have a voice to tell you what they're frustrated with, what they enjoy, what they wish was next, or what they want from a development opportunity, allows you to really tailor that experience to meet the masses needs. And as a learner, I feel far more motivated, or I feel the momentum of my progress when I feel like I can contribute back. And then particularly if any of that gets used, I immediately am going to get that kind of adrenaline rush to go, hey, they took my note and they turned it into something. Now, my note could be one of 5,000 other submissions that is right. And so it might not just be me, but that's my perspective on that, is that my perception is they took my feedback and implemented a change that ultimately helps me. And I think that's a huge motivating factor for a lot of users, is just the ability to contribute to the process, to help others, and to ultimately drive some of your business forward.
This is an interesting one for me because a lot of times people are really, I guess, pigeonholed into their own thoughts, their own opinions, their own assumptions. And when you're in a leadership role, you can come down to think you know best, but you're also, I think about TV broadcasting when I think about feedback from others. When you watch a soccer game, a basketball game, a hockey game, a baseball game, whatever, you always have the view that you look at, and then they'll give you the view of the players, right? They give you the behind the pitcher view so you can see where the ball goes in the strike zone. They'll give you the on the court lower camera views, or behind the quarterback view in football, whatever it is, or in soccer they call it the tactical view. And the game feels different from that perspective. And I think create engagement, or engaging your learners and their feedback is basically you're getting the on the field opinion. And reality of it is it's very hard to make sales training if you're not selling every day, and it's very hard to make functional training about manufacturing something if you're not doing it every day, and so on and so on and so on. And if you elicit feedback of those who are doing the task, you're going to get a different opinion regardless, because if you're staring at it from the side, you could stand there all day and watch somebody do a task, but your opinion is still going to be different than the person who's actually doing the task regardless. And getting that different feedback, getting that different perspective is super, super important. But on the flip side of it, like Scott said, once somebody gives that feedback and they see you act on it, the empowerment and the engagement with that individual or the group that gave the feedback is going to skyrocket through the roof, because they feel part of it. And once we've talked about empowerment and once somebody feels part of something, it's super important.
You brought up something that made me also think about feedback and the importance from a learning and development standpoint. Is if you want to elicit feedback, right, from your users, you have to give them the opportunity to influence change. And some of that means that you have to be open to what it is that you're going to get from a feedback loop. And when you mention TV broadcast, I think about an actual real world example that's not that old. 2 seasons ago in the NFL, I believe, they ran their first, the opening game. It was the Hall of Fame game or whatever. And when you think about feedback loops, they don't even have to be built into your platform. They can be built outside of. It's just, are you monitoring it and using that? Now, here's the example I'll give is, I don't remember if it was Fox or if it was CBS. I don't remember who had the game, but one of the things that they were doing, they thought it would be a great idea to indicate which team was on offense, which is not unusual. They often do it by putting a football next to their name or a dot. And they were going to put this yellow bar right next to the name of the 2 teams. I couldn't even tell you which 2 teams were playing. I don't recall. But what it made it look like is that there was always a penalty on every play, because when you think design and things like that, there's usually a yellow indicator when a flag has been thrown in the game. And the problem was it was so bright yellow next to the name of the team that was on offense that on Twitter, people were like, I'm so confused. Was there holding? Like, what was the penalty? And the response from the team was actually to alter that production in the middle of the game. So at halftime, they actually changed everything to get rid of that yellow indicator, because they were listening to the feedback of the viewers of the game right in that moment. I think had they not been willing to listen to, hey, this has been a bad experience, we've got feedback, we're going to give it to you. That was an almost instantaneous thing, which is kind of a big deal when you think about the level of effort it took to change that virtually on the fly in the middle of a broadcast. But that is the mentality that I think you have to have if you're looking to elicit feedback from your users. You have to be willing to use it and make the changes and adjustments that you're hearing from the masses. So those are our top 5 tips on ways to use technology to motivate your employees. Hopefully that brought a little bit of some thoughts to help you think about the ways you utilize technology with your day-to-day. I know for me, this is, again, I love the technology side of this, so it was fun to bring some of that into our conversation around motivation.
I find it, it's interesting that we, the flow of it, and I want to say that we thought about this, but I don't think we did. Tip 1 was about exploration, and I think that all of these things really come down to engaging and motivating your learner through exploration. They're all kind of tidbits in there, but we ended on the feedback, and I think the feedback of your learners is going to create that overall structure. And anytime you're doing, developing your learning culture, which was last episode, or talking about your technology, that feedback is really going to be what harbors that exploration. So from exploration to feedback and everything in between, I think, those 5 kind of concepts can really shape the positive direction so you can motivate your employees.
I appreciate you giving a little view behind the curtain that we don't actually plan some of this stuff, but it did work out really well, because I do think it almost makes a loop, right? So you kind of go through those steps, and by the time you reach number 5, you're getting feedback that then goes back to number 1 to kind of facilitate how we help people explore more. So fortuitous for us to be able to make that connection. Hopefully that helps you out today. We really enjoyed this topic. I know I did, at least. I won't speak for Daniel, but I assume he probably was on board with it as well. Without further ado, though, let's get happy. It's that time of the show. We want to bring a little positivity, a little energy into the world, bring back to something fun going on in our lives for the audience, something we're pretty happy about. I will go first. I'm pretty excited. My sister is actually coming into town this week to spend a little time with the boys and to watch some baseball this weekend. I think it's actually the first time she'll have been able to see my oldest play in a tournament. So, and he's been doing it for a while, but it seems like every time she's in town, we either don't have something scheduled or it gets rained out or something like that. So excited that she's going to come and hang out with us, help watch the boys while we work a little bit on she's taking a long weekend. So really excited to have her come in and just kind of spend some time with family.
Awesome, Scott. I think family time is always great. Actually, my younger brother is in town right now. He lives in the US. So we've had some, limited time spent together over the past year. So it's good to have him in town, but that is not my positivity point, although it is a positive one. On Friday, the Euro Cup for European soccer kicked off, but it also just kicked off what I call, international season for soccer. So there's a lot of different international tournaments in each of the regions. Obviously, Euro, Latin America, North America, Asia. I love international soccer more than I do club soccer, just because it's so passionate and exciting, and it brings so many different communities together, which is unique. It brings, typically with international events, it brings a bunch of people who don't usually watch soccer out of the woodwork just because they're supporting their nation, and that's really awesome. So for the next month, I get to enjoy that. I'm supporting Portugal. Obviously, I'm Portuguese. We we won 3-0 yesterday, which is a big one against Hungary. So we're pretty pumped about that. And I'll throw in a little international soccer notice from Canada perspective. Canada has reached the final stage of World Cup qualifying for the first time since 1992. So things are on the up and up over here, Scott.
Picking up.
Yes, summer of soccer. I'm back on the field training for soccer now, getting ready for the university season coming up in the fall. So just a summer of soccer ahead. My wife's super thrilled about it every time I put it on. Overall,
I can only imagine.
Just pumped. 3 games a day, every day. It's always my background noise. So excited about it.
Well done. Summer is here. We're being more active. We're getting out there. And Daniel's season has begun. So I dig it. All right. That will do it for us today. I'm Scott Babcock. He's Daniel Mendonca. And we will talk to you next week.
Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the If You Build It, Will They Learn podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Join the conversation by emailing us at podcast@haylight.com. Find us on social media at Build It, Learn It, and be sure to check us out on the web at www.halight.com. That's HALIGHT.com.